Welcome to the Moffitt Method Podcast, where longtime strength and conditioning coach Tommy Moffitt explores everything from the art of coaching, improving performance, sports nutrition, and mental training. Now, welcome your host, Coach Tommy Moffitt.
Welcome to the Moffitt Method Podcast. If you're listening for the first time, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends. Before we get to today's guest, I'd like to take a moment to talk about the Moffitt Method training program. At the Moffitt Method, we offer a remote coaching solution for sport teams, sport organizations, and schools. Our product includes a 52-week, year-round lifting and running program with over 180 instructional videos. If you are interested or know of someone who may be interested, please contact us via our website, themoffittmethod.fit, or you can email us at info@themoffittmethod.fit. Today's episode is part one of a two-part series with our extremely bright and talented guest, Sam Contorno. Sam is the Associate Director of Applied Sports Science for the University of Texas Longhorns football team. Sam spent 5 seasons as an assistant sports performance coach and applied sports science coordinator for Stanford football, and in 1 season as the coordinator of sports science for the University of Maryland football team. She earned her master's degree in nutrition from the University of Bridgeport and a BS in molecular integrative neuroscience from Binghamton University. Welcome to the podcast, Sam. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Coach. Thank you so much for having me on. This is going to be so much fun.
Thank you. I'm glad you're excited about it. And you know, you are the first full-time sports scientist to be here. So congratulations.
I love that. Thank you. That is an honor. And judging by how much we talked about sports science, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So it's going to be good. So let's go on and get started. Okay. So with degrees in molecular integrative neuroscience and a master's degree in nutrition, how did you end up in sports science, strength and conditioning, and working in college football?
That is a great question. And definitely when I was getting those degrees, I had no idea that this was going to be my career. But I think if you ask any single person in my life that they're surprised if I'm doing this, not a single person is surprised. I've always been into sports. I was raised in a sports family. I played competitive sports my whole life. The only time I didn't was when I went to college. I was super burnt out from playing softball. I had been obsessed with it since I was, 3 years old playing t-ball. And I was just kind of over, I had bad coaches, which I know is always a reason why people kind of get into this, but I was over it by the end of high school. And I was like, I want a different experience. I want to be a student. I want to go to med school. I wanted to be a brain surgeon originally. So I went to Binghamton University in upstate New York. I purposely didn't go to UConn because all my friends went to UConn. So I went to this school with no football team and not a big sports scene. And, it was an incredible experience. There was always a little bit of a part of me that wanted to go to school for dietetics. I thought nutrition might be my path because I had always been interested in it. But by the end of it was my senior year in college, and I had to take 1 gym class requirement to graduate. So I ended up taking an exercise science class. And I remember sitting in this exercise science class and I was like, oh man, this was kind of this sort of feels like what I should have been learning the whole time. Not to mention, I probably went to too many bars and didn't study for organic chemistry hard enough to get into med school. So I was going to probably pivot and do something else. But I look back on that and I'm so thankful for the education that I got, because that last semester, I was like, okay, I helped start a minor in health and wellness studies. And I took the only exercise science class they had, the only nutrition class they had. I had to take anatomy and physiology through the nursing department. And I'll never forget my last semester, I was sitting in class. It was a behavioral neuroscience class, a performance genomics class, a stress management class, all these different classes, and everybody was teaching me the same thing. I think we were learning like the human or the female hormonal cycle in like 4 different classes. And I was like, this is really interesting. I'm just learning about this from different perspectives. And while maybe I don't remember exactly what I learned in college, I definitely like learned how to think about things from different perspectives. And I think without realizing it, that like kind of naturally led me to sports science, even though, 10 years ago, I had literally no idea what any of this was. I mean, 5 years ago, I don't think I knew what sports science was. So it's been so cool to like see how this field has grown, and you just kind of never know where it's going to take you. But immediately after college, I ended up interning with a doctor actually, and she treated solely with nutrition, and didn't prescribe any medicines. It was all like very molecular based on like, this is what your blood work is saying, this is what supplements you need to take. So I ended up asking her like, where'd you go to med school? Where'd you learn this? And she's like, I didn't learn it in med school. And I was like, oh, well, now I really don't want to go to med school. So I ended up getting my master's in nutrition. And the master's program, it wasn't a typical dietetics path. It was like biochemistry focused. And again, it's not at all related to exercise science, but it's still very much biology. So I felt like at least I'm a little bit well-versed in the sciences, even if it's not exercise science. I'm probably like the least educated sports scientist, strength and conditioning coach when it comes to like the normal education path.
Yeah. You didn't take a lot of kinesiology or? Not
a single one. Yeah. I have my CSCS. That is about it. But yeah, so I graduated college. I started this master's program, and I started personal training because I didn't know what a strength coach was. None of my advisors in college were strength and conditioning coaches. Nobody knew what that field was. And had I had known, maybe that had changed my mind, but I didn't know. And a few years later, I wasn't loving what I was doing. The private sector is not for me. The general population is not for me. It wasn't challenging enough. And I was like, should I go back to school for physical therapy? Should I, what should I do next? And my brother at the time actually coached at our old high school. He coached football, and he had worked at UConn in the past. And I remember him saying one day, like, oh, like our strength coaches like bring like 90-pound weights out onto the field. Like I could see you doing this. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so he calls me, he's like, hey, like our strength and conditioning coach just quit. Like you should come apply to this job. And I was like, okay, like I have my CSCS at the time. I had been working with high school athletes at a physical therapy, personal training gym. I could do this. Like, I walk in there all confident. I'm like, okay, like I know what I'm doing. And I think the interview goes well. And then I find out that they thought I couldn't handle the position, and I didn't get it. And being a 5'2" female, I've just probably lived with a chip on my shoulder my whole life. And that to me was like the point where I was like, okay, I know I can do this. And so I'm going to find a way to do this. And so I applied to every single internship program in the country. And I got rejected from every single internship program in the country, except for UCLA's Olympic internship. And I only got the internship because I sent in some like crazy admissions video where they asked you like, talk about deadlift technique and then tell us why you want to do this. And I'm like recording like, take after take of like, well, this is how you deadlift. And I'm like, okay, I'm over this. So I recorded take. I'm like, hey, I'm not going to talk about deadlifting. I'm not going to answer any of your questions. But what I'm going to tell you is that I'm going to be the best strength coach in the country. And I just need somebody to give me a chance.
That's awesome.
And I mean, they like made me watch it back. They're like, here, we need to embarrass you by showing this to you. But they accepted. And so I quit my job at 26 years old. I moved across the country. I drained my savings for 9 months to intern at UCLA and then intern at Stanford. And Stanford gave me a chance to be on the football staff. At that time, I chose that internship specifically because it was a competition. And you competed against your fellow interns for like who got the most points. And at the end, whoever had the most points could pick their team. And so I was like, I'm going to go there. I'm going to win the internship. I'm going to memorize all the facts about cleaning and how to set up bars with chains and, the team roster, anything they need me to do. I'm going to study my ass off. I'm going to earn this spot and I'm going to pick football. And then nobody could tell me no. And I have to give credit to Shannon Turley and Colin Carroll, both people I worked with at Stanford, and that whole athletics department never for a second cared that I was a female.
That's awesome.
They were amazing. They cared that I came in, I worked my ass off, and everything I got there, I earned. And it was never, oh, she can't do this. It was like, I'm going to find a way to do it. And they never made me feel like I was a female. They never made a big deal out of it. They never celebrated it. It was like, we just have this really good employee who has been capable of doing these things. So we've let her do it. And so that's how I got into strength and conditioning. I know that's a long story there.
No.
But
well, I think it's important. And you did 2 internships, right?
Yeah, I did. UCLA, Olympic, and then football.
That's a heck of a commitment right there. And, a lot of people, and I get phone calls all the time, people wanting to know how they get into the field. And, your story is perfect for it. And because it's not an easy field to get into, and for a lot of reasons, it was tough for me to get in. And the main reason back then that there wasn't a lot of strength coaches. Mm-hmm. And then now there's probably too many strength coaches and not enough positions available. Mm-hmm. And so how did you make the switch to sports science? How did you become a data geek?
I think I've probably always been a data geek, and I just didn't know it. Actually, one of my good friends who I interned with at UCLA, this must have been in 2018, 2019, he ended up getting a GA position at UCLA in sports science. And I remember him telling me about what his position was. And I'm like, wow, you're a loser. Like that seems so lame. And it's so funny looking back on that. But in 2019, our dietitian quit. And in California, there's no rules with who can practice nutrition. Kind of in the sports field in general, like strength and conditioning coaches always take on that role. Yeah. But anyway, our dietitian quit. And so Turley was like, hey, Sam, you have your master's in nutrition. Be our nutritionist for the 2019 season. And I was like, okay, great. Yeah. And the really cool part about that was I was able to build my own program. So when I look back on what I built back then, there were so many rules. It was not a black and white nutrition program. Everything had rules. It had times. The guys were able to follow it really easily. And I started getting into just using Excel to create macro calculator sheets and to track body weights and just basic stuff like that. And going into that 2019 season, we ended up getting Athos shorts back when Athos shorts were a thing. And we ended up getting, our football department wanted to do a wellness survey. Mm-hmm. And they're like, okay, well, Sam, since you're kind of a nerd and you seem to like these numbers, you take on these projects, this would be good for you. They didn't say it that nicely, that's for sure. And so that was my project. And the best part about those 2 pieces of technology is they were complete and utter disasters, total train wrecks. Athos shorts were terrible. They died all the time. Yeah. The data meant absolutely nothing. Yeah. Getting guys to wear them, the compliance, it was super hard. Yeah. And then this wellness survey, and I have very strong opinions on wellness surveys, also complete disaster. The way we rolled it out, the way we coached it to the guys, how we held them accountable. I spent all of my day texting them, making them fill out this stupid survey. We showed it to too many people. We didn't use it the right way. People gave me technology, but they didn't have the question. Right. Or the question that they were trying to answer was the wrong one. This was the wrong tech for the question. And to be honest, there was no better intro to sports science than that. Yeah. Again, I have this whole list in my head of things I will never do when I roll out tech. And that sort of shaped a lot of my program. Right. And so then 2020 comes along and we get Catapult, we get Force Plates, we get Nordboard. And again, it's all right, Sam, now this is all yours. And credit to Colin Carroll. He let me just build whatever I wanted to build with it. And so 2020, we did a good job of starting to introduce this technology. Obviously the pandemic happened. Obviously, like they cut our season. Then they brought the season back, and there was a period of time where I was just like writing in emails like, this guy's probably gonna pull his hamstring. This guy's probably gonna pull his hamstring. This guy's probably gonna pull his hamstring. And it was like bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
And so next thing you know, all the coaches are like, does this data like actually make sense? Because, you know, we're kind of seeing some stuff from it. So we got a little bit of momentum, and then our county actually like banned us from playing football, and we had to go on the road for 19 days.
Oh, wow.
And we were in that situation with like San Jose State and the 49ers where we all had to leave the county. So like obviously the force plate gets left behind, the Nord board gets left behind, the catapult units come, but it's a complete disaster. We're practicing in parking lots, we're practicing in, you know, anywhere we can. And so it kind of got put on hold, but I was still like kind of getting my bearings with all the tech. So it was good for me to learn without the pressure of like having to, you know, distribute tons of reports and you know, communicate a lot with the coaches, because David Shaw was great. He wanted to see the information, but he's like, I don't know if we're ready as a coaching staff yet to see it. And I respect that decision looking back on it, because I don't think we would have known exactly what we were doing with it then.
Yeah.
So 2021 rolls around, and now we're rolling. Again, Colin's like, Sam, it's yours to build. We started putting in protocols for catapult, for Nordboard, for force plates. We got perch that year. And so we really started to like fine tune a lot of what we were doing. And it got to the point where I was, you know, coaching bench press, but I was like, there are better things that I could be spending my time doing. Like I'd actually rather be behind a computer. And that's kind of the point in your career where you're like, I would be open to making this switch. So then wasn't looking for a job in 2022, bought a couch, leased an apartment, was like, I'll be at Stanford for a little while. Next thing you know, I get a call from RD, and he's like, hey, we have this, you know, sports science position open. And I had heard about it randomly through somebody who used to intern there. I wasn't even looking. And it really ended up being the next perfect fit, where they didn't have an established program. They had a ton of technology. I could come in, I could do my own thing. I can refine my skill set. And I think we were able to build something really, really cool last year. And again, you go into 2023, I'm not looking for a new job. I'm fine where I am. I get a call from Torrey Becton at Texas, and he's like, hey, like come run our sports science program. And I was like, absolutely, like sign me up. And so we have a full applied sports science department here. So I have 5 sports science coworkers, which I've never had before.
Right.
They have an unbelievable system, and we just have an unbelievable team. And so I don't know how I ended up here some days, but.
Now, those 5 other sports science people, do they work with just football, or they work with all the other departments?
So they work with the whole department. So the way it's structured at Texas, it's actually a cool system. I'm technically an employee of the hospital. There's like a local hospital chain that has always funded Texas athletics. And they're very invested in Texas athletics, but they were like, hey, instead of giving money, let's build a sports science department. We'll invest in the people. And so Travis Vlantis is the director of applied sports science, and he oversees the whole department. He's awesome. And then we have 2 applied sports scientists and 2 performance analysts that work on this staff as well. And they work with the Olympic sports. They work with, we have Smartabase, and we have it all built out through our EMR and athletic training systems. It's like, we probably have one of the first like EMR build outs in an AMS. I know now more are offering it, but so our whole medical system is on this. So they spend a lot of time like working with this database to make it super functional for the rest of the departments. A lot of the athlete testing with Olympic sports. And so I'm technically the only one assigned to a sport. So I operate in football. So I still operate under this department, but then I sort of operate autonomously as well with what football needs. So it's been amazing to have, you know, sports scientists who I can bounce ideas off of, or we can like all do testing together. Like I've never had that. I don't think there are a lot of places where you get coworkers that are sports scientists. Right. So it's been really cool.
Now, do you have interns or assistants that help you with implementing the program at Texas?
So I have 1 intern right now. I'm bringing in 2 more interns for the summer to continue the internship program that I was doing at Maryland.
Right.
And then while the other, like the performance analysts don't necessarily work with football, there is one he's unbelievable at coding, and he helps me with a lot of long-term projects for football.
Yeah.
And so like we have a lot of really cool projects that we're working on. So all of like the data science stuff for football, he's working on that, where I do all the, applied hands-on stuff. And then I have my one Texas student intern, and then I'll have my 2 interns starting in the summer.
Wow. That's awesome. Well, so this field, I mean, I guess you could say people started banging around with Catapult 10 years ago, maybe. Mm-hmm. Some people had force plates before that, but, it's evolved, man. It's evolving quick. What trends and technologies do you see having an impact in the future? Is there anything new that's out there, or products that are emerging that you think might be of some help?
Well, it's funny that you say sports science has been around, or Catapult's been around for 10 years. Sports science really has been around for as long as there have been sports. I remember our first conversation, you talked about doing like blood lactate testing on the sidelines. I love that. Like, that's sports science. And my frustration with sports science is that it becomes synonymous with technology. Mm-hmm. And I'm the first person to admit that, like, I hate every single piece of tech I have. It breaks on me every single day. It drives me insane. Like, Bluetooth has like been the worst invention of my life. Yeah. But I think how I see the field of sports science evolving is it's kind of like nutrition was like 5 years ago, when not every school had a nutritionist. And now every team has at least one nutritionist. Every team has, every nutritionist has 2 fellows. Every nutritionist has a room inside of the football weight room. Mm-hmm. I'm fortunate enough to have a room inside of our football weight room. I have a lab. And I think in the next 5 years, you're going to start to see those setups in every football weight room, where there's a lab in every one, and there's a sports scientist, and they have, 2 paid fellows. Yeah. And I think it's going to start to kind of grow like nutrition is growing. I also think we're going to see like a split in like specialties. So you're going to start to see people who are really good at the applied hands-on coordination of technologies on a, the team level. And you're going to see a lot of people who start to go down that sports data science path, where maybe they're doing more of the data backend stuff. So I see the field really growing in that aspect. If I had to pick a technology that I think is going to be big in the next few years, I bet in the next 5 to 10 years, we're not even using GPS anymore, and we're all using video analysis, like baseball is. I think it's way more complicated with the sport of football. PFF still has to hand tag to even see who's on the field. So I don't think we're there yet with video, but when you see like the Amazon Web Service, talking about speeds and different metrics out on, in the NFL games, like I'm not entirely sure if they're using Connexon to get that data, if they're using video analysis to get that data. So I bet 5 to 10 years, we're going to switch to video for a lot of this stuff. Yeah.
Baseball's kind of been ahead of that, because at LSU, we always had the track man, and, that tells you the spin on the baseball and how fast the velocities are when it hits the bat, how fast the bats are and everything. So, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it would be cool to have, a lab in the weight room and have a staff of people, for us, and a lot like you when you were at Maryland and Stanford, the strength staff, and everybody pitches in, and there's something that's done by everyone. And, for us, it was always every guy on the staff had to learn something. Now, I think it was good for them because it adds value to their expertise. But, yeah, I think that would be cool. I would have liked to have a sports science department. Now, did you ever get the lactate tester?
No, I didn't. I should have. We never ended up getting one.
Yeah, mine just broke.
I don't know how excited the guys would have been about me taking like blood samples.
Taking blood samples on the sideline. Yeah. So,
but that's see, you're the OG sports scientist. You were doing this way before us.
Yeah. So my lactate tester was probably 20 years old, at least 20 years old. And so it broke, it broke just a few weeks ago. So I looked at the price of it. I think I might have to wait before I get a new one. But yeah, Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I was going to start doing some lactate stuff on myself, so I dug it out, and it was broke. So shoot.
For it to last 20 years, that's pretty good.
Oh yeah, it did. Yeah, and I'm sure it had something to do with just not being used, in a while, or the batteries eat it up somehow. Who knows? All right, so can you tell us what pieces of technology that you're using now with the Longhorns, and then how often do you use it? And I know that's kind of I'm shooting, I'm taking just a big shot right now. Just give us an overall view of what y'all are doing.
Absolutely. My big, just philosophy with technology is I'm not going to use it unless I have an intervention for it. And we are fortunate to have a lot of technology, but I don't ever want to be a person who just tests to test.
Right.
I want to be a person to test with intention. And so the cool thing about starting is I have a lot of technology, and I'll cover, kind of what we use, but it's also been fun to sort of learn some new technology. And a lot of my kind of this downtime that we'll have soon, a lot of my projects are going to be creating implementation protocols for some of this technology. So obviously we have Catapult. I think that's probably the thing that most sports scientists spend the most time using. Just it's the most time intensive, the logistics, the operation, the information, the reporting, all of that. So obviously we have that. We have force plates, we have Nordboard, we have a groin bar. We have 2 Dari motions, so the markerless motion capture. I have one in my office. We also have one in my lab, and then we also have one in the other sports science lab. So we use that for baseline testing, and that's something I'm kind of excited to dive into more. We have a thermohuman camera, which is a thermography camera. So it takes a heat picture of the athletes, and it will give us different indications of what muscles might be hot or cold that day. So that's been one that we've been, really testing out. And I'm really excited for some of the stuff that we're going to be able to do with this one. And our guys seem to really like it. We have Elite Form on all of our racks. We have, what else do we have? We have so many things. We have a ton of different recovery tools. And another thing that I'm trying to do is come up with different recovery protocols, because I feel like we don't utilize recovery to its, best and smartest extent sometimes in this field. I think we overprescribe cold. I think we underprescribe hot, and we don't necessarily prescribe when to use things at certain times. So I guess I kind of count that as one of my pieces of technology.
Yeah.
We have in the sports science lab, we have a Kaiser leg press that we use for some single leg force velocity profiling.
So let's go deeper in the GPS tracking with Catapult, because when I talk to you and when you speak, you can tell that you have a passion for the GPS data. You can just tell. So can you tell us what you're looking at on a daily basis, and then how that influences the strength and conditioning staff and the football coaches when it comes to the planning and organization of training?
Yeah. So it's funny that I sound like I like GPS this much, because just like all my tech, I probably am the most mad at Catapult all of the time. But I don't look at any metrics that are any crazier than anyone else looks at. And I can go into exactly what those are. I think the biggest thing and the biggest success that I have found in implementing GPS is my reporting and the communication.
Right.
And you can have all fancy technology in the world, but if your data doesn't show people what it needs to show people, and if they don't understand what they're supposed to be looking at with your data, and it's not communicated, then it all falls short. So how we use it here at Texas, every time we're on the field for anything, we have Catapults on. I think the best part about this staff is that, Tori Becton understands Catapult, and he understands it at a high level, and he and his staff had to do it on their own at Cal. And so again, the best part about being a strength coach and having to learn all this stuff and being exposed to it is you can speak that language. And, he developed that because he had to. And so when I came in, it was right towards the end of the off season. And even when I was like getting ready to move out here, he'd call me and he'd be like, "Did you see our explosive efforts today?" And I'm like, "This is so awesome." Like he gets it. Like I don't have to, I don't have to overanalyze our winter, because I know that what we're doing is trying to prepare everybody for game demands and spring practice demands. And I think the staff does a really, really good job of that. And to come in and have people with a baseline knowledge can also be tricky, though. So I need to make sure that like I can defend what metrics I want to use, or why I want to use things, or why I want to, show things.
Well,
And
can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So I got to tell the story. So when it first came out, we had when Catapult first came out, you got, you got all the bugs, the little box that you plug in from the charge and the download and stuff. And then your computer, you had this, they called it a dongle. I guess they still don't use the dongle,
I've never heard that. No.
You'd plug this little thing in the USB port. And then you had an antenna that plugged into the computer, and it was a big piece of PVC pipe. Do you still have to use the antenna?
No.
Yeah.
We've moved on from the antenna.
Yeah. So we used to, and it wasn't me, it was one of our assistant strength coaches. Whenever we went into Tiger Stadium to practice or to scrimmage or for a game, they would take the new interns and they would say, "Hey, we need you to go turn on the GPS." And so they're like, "Okay, where is it?" And they would point to the top of the stadium and say, "It's underneath the scoreboard, and it's in a little gray box. You can't miss it. Go up there and turn it on." So the guy would run up there, and there wasn't a gray box. And the guy, you would see the guy run across the football field, run all the way up Tiger Stadium, look around, and he would look forever because he wants to do a good job. And
that is amazing initiation.
And then they would go, "Oh, it's over on the other side." So then you'd see the guy run up the side of the stadium and look for it. So they could never find it, and they'd figure it out. So this one guy comes bouncing back down. I'm not going to name any names. And they said, "You find it?" And he goes, "Yeah, I found it. I flipped it on." And we were like, "Oh my God, what did he flip on?" And so we had to send him, we told him, "Go back up there and turn it on." He might have turned off all the lights to the stadium or something. I don't know.
I think I need to implement this with my new interns. I hope they're not listening. That's amazing.
Yeah, that was the GA's introduction to Catapult. All right,
that's the best intro. No, that's the best intro sports science lesson of all time. We'll see that's actually the perfect, that's the perfect way to describe sports science. You run around the stadium 100 times, you press buttons, and it still doesn't work.
Yeah. So how have the players responded to all this? How do because you hear some guys say that their team, the players don't like wearing the bros, or, for us, the players didn't like the straps, but we never had really that big of a problem with anything. Now, especially the performance type stuff like the force plate, they love jumping on that. But anyway, so how do you get them how do they respond, and how do you get them to buy in?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for that is education. That's the easiest way to get players to respond to anything. I mean, from like a personal level, to get these guys to buy in, like it's been tough the last 2 years, right? You go to a new program and you have to immediately like establish yourself, and you have to immediately establish sports science. So there's kind of like two ways to do it. I think the first one is I learn everyone's name the first week. I give myself 1 week where I have to know the whole team's name. And we have the cheat code as sports scientists. We're constantly looking at their names on things. Yeah. And so it's easier to put a face to the name. The second thing I always do is I learn what all their injuries are, or like you see it as you start to test, and I ask them, I'm like, "Hey, how's your ankle? Hey, how's your shoulder? Hey, how's your knee?" And at some point, like they come tell you without you even asking. They're like, "Hey, my knee felt great today." And they immediately learn that like you care about how they feel. And I think that's the first step with sports science, is like they have to know that I care about their health. They have to know that like I'm aware of what's going on with them physically. And the second thing is education. And so I've already done a few different presentations with our team on what catapult is. And I always like to do that with teams, but I got to Texas and one kid came up to me. He was like a newcomer, and he's like, so what does this thing even do? And I'm like, oh, like you guys don't know yet. So we did like a team presentation, and it's just, I have one super simple slide. I talk about what the metrics are. I talk about, why you have to wear it, what we do with it. And then I set rules. So it's called the specialist rule. If you don't wear your catapult twice, I give it to the kicker, and the kicker gets to wear it at practice. And so you don't know what your speed is. And I know that our kicker stands around, does absolutely nothing. And so my data is useless. And so that's the rule. So not only do the kids who wear the catapult know that they have to wear the catapult, my kickers are excited because they know that if the kids don't wear the catapult, they get to wear the catapult. And so I think it's just being firm about your expectations. And I'm super honest about what we use it for. I tell them like, hey, if it's camp and you don't wear your catapult and you're having 4 really hard practices in a row, I can't tell the coach that you're having 4 really hard practices in a row because you took your catapult off. So like I'm using it to help you. And I think like the first week, I always try to play that game. It's like, when do I start to be, harsh with them, especially coming in at the end of the winter. I am a coach by nature, and so I can't help myself. It was like the second team run, and I yelled at one of the DBs because he wasn't wearing his catapult, and he sprints inside to go get it. Next thing you know, the run's over, and all the strength coaches were like, "Oh, we heard you yelled at BJ today," and I'm like, "Well, can't help it. Sorry." Like, so they know the standard set immediately. They know what it's for. I post everything, so like I'll post their speeds, I'll post their jumps, I'll post anything. And so that gets them to buy in, and they want to wear their unit because they want to be on the list. All these kids want to do is compete.
Yeah.
It could be over anything.
That's right.
And I'm fortunate to have really great coaches here that care about the catapult data. And so one of our coaches actually, he like does presentations with his groups on the catapult reports. He'll put them up on the screen in his meetings, and he'll be like, hey, like, why do you think this kid's player load is higher than this kid's? And like, they'll come downstairs and they'll argue with each other. They'll be like, I'm a better mover. I know where I'm going. My player load's lower. So like people who say like kids don't love data, like you just have to figure out how to get them to compete against the data, teach them what it means and why it's important. And like, they're obsessed with anything.
That's right. They're obsessed.
And if they're bought in, they're bought in, everybody else in the program has to be bought in because that's all they talk about. So they're my sell. If I get them bought in, everyone else has to buy in because then that's all they want to talk about.
Yeah. And what you do and what you've done is you build and I hate saying sports science, but you build a culture of the players knowing that it's important and it's cool to see, like, and any competitive athlete is going to do it. Like I say, there's 2 types of athletes. There's the one type of guy that gets up every morning and he says to himself, I'm going to do everything that I can do today to be the best football player, student athlete, human being that I can possibly be. And then there's everybody else. And the more of those guys you have on your team, the better you are. And they're the ones that buy into this. And when they see, their max velo go down or their RSI go down, they want to know why. And they want to do things to help it. And you said y'all don't have a lot of recovery stuff, or that's something that you want to work on. And, that's how you create buy-in there, because then they know that if I go do this, then I'm going to feel better and I'll run faster in tomorrow's practice.
Yeah. And I have to give these kids in this culture a lot of credit. It's a great team culture. And these kids are very much like professionals. Like if you played high school football in Texas, like it's the most important thing in your life. Yeah. And so they operate very much like that. And so I can thermo-human a kid and I can say, hey, I need you to go get in the hot tub. I need you to go get in the infrared pod, like whatever. And like give them a time. Because that's the thing with these kids too. You have to give them rules. You can't say, hey, go in the cold tub. They're going to be like, I don't how long? Like if you're like, hey, I need you to go in the cold tub for 10 minutes today. Yeah. Okay. Like I can do that. Or I need you to go bike for 10 minutes and get in the hot tub for 10 minutes. Like they can do that stuff. Right. So like they've been really, really good about responding to that kind of information. Like they'll come in the morning, they're like, are we thermohumaning today? And I'm like, not today, but like appreciate that you're asking. That means like you understand why we do it and you want to do it. And so, yeah, they're the easy sell. And even like with the glasses, like you let them do something like that. Whether say the glasses don't work, then the kids have caught jugs, 3 times a week. So it's like you let them do something like that, and then they're like, I also need to wear my catapult. Like if I understand that this piece of it, like, okay, when she tells me I have to wear my catapult, I know she's not bullshitting me because she lets me wear the cool glasses and catch footballs. Like there's that balance with some of these players who, might not know that this is the best thing for them. And it's me trying to give them that information.
Yeah. And there's more and more kids using it in high school now also.
Yeah. Especially in Texas.
Yeah. Especially in Texas. And, there are states where schools have force plates, they have GPS, they have velocity-based training systems, they have 36 racks. And I mean, I've seen high school weight rooms that look better than collegiate weight rooms. And it's, it's not uncommon for that. So you're going to get more and more kids. Plus they show it in the NFL. It's all over the media and Instagram and everywhere.
Oh yeah. That's another thing, too, with these kids is, it's so funny in our recruiting presentation. That's the first thing I say. It's like, you guys have all seen this on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is like, I want to make like 120 mini sports scientists. Like, I don't want to be the only person that knows this information. So I love now when our kids Nord board, I'll be like, hey, you're at, 14% asymmetry. And they're like, what does that mean? I'm like, oh, like I'll take an extra 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Let's talk through this. Like orange line is your right leg, blue line's your left leg. Like we're trying to get these closer. And now sometimes they'll test and I'll be like, oh, you're at 12%. They're like, oh, great. I was at 16% last week. I've gotten better. Like next time we'll be under 10 because they know like my rules now. And like, that's what I want. I don't want to be the one sports scientist. I want this program to be all sports scientists and being able to make these decisions.
And when they're a pro, they'll know what that number is. But Nick Saban said this, and he said it more than once. He says, coaching is teaching, and teaching is motivating people to learn. So instead of, there are some programs, a kid would do a Nord board, and there's somebody standing there with their cell phone doing it, and then the kid gets up and there's no interaction between the kid and the person, instead of saying, today, you're 478, with a 3% asymmetry. What? Oh yeah. Wow. But there's that causes or creates buy-in from the players. Yeah. And the more they know, the more they're going to be interested in it and the more they're going to do.
Yeah, I'm sure I've driven every head strength coach I've worked for crazy at some points because I'm sitting there giving it, talking to the kid about his data, and it's like, all right, we got to test everyone.
Yeah, we got to go. We got another set.
But it's worth it. It's worth it at first to spend more time to do this and get them to understand. Because again, they want to feel like they're in control of their health too, as much as we are, and that's been the best part is watching them learn as we go and being able to speak the language and argue about it. And it's like, okay, cool. This is actually making an impact. And this isn't even the stuff we do on the field with it yet. This isn't even what I tell the coaches. This is just getting the guys to buy into giving me great intent. Because if you don't get good intent out of these tests, then you might as well not be doing the tests. And I think, again, if you run more tests just because you have more technology, just because it's more affordable, you're not doing better sports science. You might not even be doing sports science. You might be doing the kid a disservice because that's not what he needs because he didn't test well.
So let's talk a little training here, some nuts and bolts. So how do you work with Tori during the off season? What are some of the stuff that y'all do on a daily basis to help him in the direction of his program during the off season, before spring ball? What are some things that y'all look at?
Yeah. So I think I'll kind of talk about what we looked at for this summer coming up because I got there right at the end of the off season.
Okay.
So some of the projects that he and I have been working on, and I'm in his office 12 times a day with something or other. So between him, our athletic trainer, we are all in constant communication. But when we he's he's very catapult savvy.
Yeah.
And so we're already like looking at stuff from last year and trying to plan our camp
like for May,
already.
June, and July. Well, all right. So
we're trying to plan. We're kind of looking at the whole year picture.
Yeah,
already.
May, June, July, August, and camp.
Yeah, and so I like to work backwards, whether it's the camp or summer. Like I like to work backwards first. And so, kind of the first thing that I look at is what the game demands were. And typically there's similar game demands from team to team, but there are going to be differences with like how you run personnel, who's on special teams, the depth of your roster, what type of offense you run. There's all little, nuances team to team. And so I always like to get that data first. What does a game look like? And then without even planning like camp yet, like what is an in-season week and what does camp look like? What do we have to prepare our kids for going into those phases? Yeah. And then that's where we can start with our summer once I have that information. So one thing that we do that I really, really like is when we were talking about the summer this year, I probably similar to how you guys did it at LSU, but football is king here. It's Texas. Yeah. They want to play football. They want PRPs. The coaches want to have these guys for as long as they can have these guys. And so what we did is we looked at our summer and we're like, okay, what qualities do we need to work on certain days? And what qualities aren't these guys going to get in their, PRPs and football stuff? And so they kind of lean on me for the direction in terms of the volumes that we need and sort of the adaptation we need. And so if, I'm just as much of a part of the strength staff where I can give exercise recommendations. I don't care what exercise we do. All I care about is that there are certain things on certain days. We're organizing certain stressors. We're making sure we're getting certain adaptations and we're making sure we're getting certain volumes. So that's where Tori and I are working hand in hand all the time on what our plan is. And from a data perspective, are we hitting it? From a, adaptation perspective, are we hitting it? Are we organizing it around PRPs the best way we can to make sure the kids are still getting what they need? And that's the beauty of the strength conditioning sports science, partnership.
Relationship. Yeah. And, that's the hardest thing because, every position group has its own culture within a culture. And some groups work harder than other groups.
Yeah.
And then there are other positions, like the offensive and defensive line, their game is played in such a small box compared to what the wide receivers and the DBs and all of those guys are going to do. So at the pace that most, like I'll pick on the offensive line, for instance. Because I was an offensive lineman. So the pace that those guys work at is slower, inherently slower than the pace that the wide receivers work at. So when you're doing and you're accounting for player-led practices and those offensive linemen are over there being O linemen, that they're not getting the workload that they're supposed to be getting compared to what the receivers are doing. And so as a strength coach during that time, you've got to have control over everything that's going on. And so it sounds like that you and coach are aligned and you have the same goal in mind and y'all work really well balancing that stuff out.
Yeah. And even last year, like some of the stuff I did with the D line is every Thursday after PRPs, they'd come run on the 1080 with me. And they do resistance sprints. And it became like, fun for them because they got to do some heavy sprinting. And for me, it was like, I know you guys are literally doing nothing except playing patty cake out on the field while the offense and defense are, sprinting. And so I need you guys to do something. And so, doing some of those protocols here, Tori was a D lineman. We have a lot of like alternative conditioning stuff that he does with those guys. So he's always really on top of like, he's great at understanding their need. They don't run like our skill guys run. And we're also like always in sync with like balancing what the skill guys are doing at practice versus sprinting. And so when I first got there, it was like the last 2 weeks of winter and he'd call me and be like, hey, like, how are the numbers today? Like if they ran fast enough at, PRPs, we don't necessarily need to sprint them as much as we thought we would tomorrow. So like super balanced. I like to joke that the in season is like sports science's Super Bowl. So like, that's when he and I are like even more connected. Like I over communicate this information to, we call it our performance team. And that's like strength and conditioning, sports science, sports nutrition, athletic training, and we have phenomenal athletic training staff. And so they are just as much in sync with like what the goal of the day for the different players and, you know, what our goals at practice are. So they're very much in sync with this. So as long as I communicate the information, like, you know, they're good enough at their jobs to go execute what they need to do without being micromanaged. And we're constantly in communication about like what athletes are flagged for what. And I think it's been cool to build that out this spring ball, but like I can only imagine like how we're going to refine this for in season. And they're so good at the protocols they have already that it really, we're just tweaking things and improving processes here and there. But like, you know, Tori's joke is that, you know, we're always cooking with gas. Like we're cooking with gas right now. Our staff is all headed in the same direction. And I have to credit
him saying that. So, all right, now that we're on the topic of notes, what do you use? And you said y'all have Smartabase, but what do y'all use when you're reporting to the coaches, or how does it go about it? Are there just little notes through email or text messages, or do you do a formal presentation every day?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think that it's about learning your environment and figuring out what people can handle at the time. Would I love for everybody to have a dashboard that they check on their own, that they know what everything means, and I don't have to say anything because they're so educated in sports science that they can look at it and see what I see? Yes. Is that the reality? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And so we have Smartabase, and I use Smartabase for all of our data goes into Smartabase, and we have such a good data collection system. I also pull some of that data to Power BI because the two of them link pretty seamlessly. And that's what I've always built reports out on in the past. And I like the way my Catapult visuals look on that. I think that your visualization is your voice a lot in this field. And if I can, you know, have this tell a story, the story I need you to see from it, like I'm going to do it the way that I need them to see it. So they in the past were getting emails with, you know, a link to a PDF and that's it.
Yeah.
And so I type very obnoxious notes, and that's my goal. My goal is that you don't even have to open my report. You can literally just read my email. And so that also is the beauty of working with one sport, because I know not everyone can do this, but since I work with football, my job is to effectively communicate this data amongst the staff. And if I can't do that, I'm not doing my job.
Right.
So my report takes me 2 seconds to make. I click 2 buttons. I have my PDFs made. But my reporting and my emails probably take me an hour.
Yeah.
And I know that's a long time, but again, like I think the most important piece is that they're getting the information and they trust the information and they're getting what they need to know. So I actually send every single coach their own email with their own position report, and I make the notes personalized, and I'll add little notes from, you know, and everything. You can look at the report and see it. Everything is color coded. Everything has flags. But I like to summarize it where if you don't even want to open the report, like I'm not offended by it. Right. And I'll give them little notes. And the one thing I've always tried to do with football coaches is provide context, because football is so based on context. It's not baseball. It's not, I threw a pitch, this guy tried to hit it and didn't. There's 1,000 things going on. There's 1,000 reasons why the data could be the data. And what I don't want coaches to do is make assumptions about it without knowing the context behind it. Right. So I'll always throw in context of why things might have been the way they are. So, this guy's contacts were higher today, but we also ran more reps in team period, or the guy's got more high velocity yards today, but we ran, it was kickoff cover. It wasn't field goal today. And so I'm trying to like educate them at the same time as I'm trying to give them the information. So that way they like start to speak the language a little bit more. And I think the biggest thing with coaches is like you have to build respect with coaches. Like if they don't think that you're great at your craft, especially when a 5'2" female walks into their football program, if they don't know that I'm great at my craft, it's going to be a lot harder for them to listen to me. And so man, like writing an email to a coach, it's like an interview. Like they're especially at first, they're judging everything I say. They're like, does she belong in our football program? And so I'm trying to teach them and show them like, hey, like this is your data. I'm not just telling you this and expecting you to know it. I'm going to teach you why this is the way it is. And I've had some amazing conversations with our coaches, because I'll notice something and I'll be like, hey, how did this kid move today? Or was there something going on with this kid, or this kid had a really good day numbers wise? Did you see anything? And then they'll come downstairs. They'll be like, hey, yeah, I saw your note about that kid. I've actually noticed this. Like, and this opens up a whole wormhole of like going down into the data, or what this kid needs. Or
this brings us to the end of today's podcast, part 1 of a 2-part series with Sam Contorno. Please, if you haven't already done so, follow the podcast and share it with your friends. If you have any questions about the Moffitt method, our training solutions for teams and schools at any level, go to our website, themoffittmethod.fit. You can connect with us through our website or email us at info@themoffittmethod.fit. Again, that is info@themoffittmethod.fit. Have a great day, and we'll see you again next week.